All right, everybody, welcome to Cyber Bulls. We have a number of great experts joining us today. We're going to talk about Tesla stock. Is there a coming bloodbath with the auto market? Might Tesla actually do even more price cuts? And we're going to learn more about Tesla's performance in China and in Europe. We've got Michael Dunne joining us. He's the CEO of Dunne Insights. He's also an LP at Assembly Ventures. We have Lars, very well known, incredible YouTube channel called Best in Tesla. He's also the author of Elon Musk Mission. And we have Jan from TeslaFix, another great YouTube channel. Our go-to for Europe and Germany. And of course, there is Jeff Lutz, who is one of our regular bulls. So welcome, everybody. Let's get started with you, Lars. You have this incredible video that I just recently watched on your channel, and you called it A Race to the Bottom. Is there a bloodbath coming? Tell us more.
Yes, a nice interesting headline there. But yeah, it's basically because also Stellantis CEO Tavares talked about that Tesla's price cuts they have been doing is making a race to the bottom and will hurt everybody if everybody else joins in on this price cuts. But I was talking in that video about how that might be true for some of the legacy automakers if they just cut prices regarding reality, because they are losing money, and we did see Ford cut the prices of their electric vehicles, even though we know they are losing like $40,000 per EV they sold in 2023. So yes, I do agree with Travera that there might become a big bloodbath, and we might start seeing the beginning of that here in 2024 as the BEV market in China is predicted, or at least the plug-in market is predicted to come into like 50% plug-in market share. And if that's the case, it's going to be a lot of the legacy automakers that don't have that percentage of their production being not even plug-ins, but definitely not BEVs. And that is just a huge market for everybody. Definitely the legacy automakers like Volkswagen that have 50% of their profits almost coming out of China, and if they're gonna fall there, we have seen them cut the prices on their ID3 there quite significant. It's actually very, very cheap in China compared to here in Europe, where the price is almost twice as high. Yeah, and Volkswagen also said that they would not really do price cuts here in Europe, but it seems like they might be doing that as well. And I think it all comes down to all these price cuts that Tesla has done, because they have kind of, in my opinion, they're kind of holding the whole automotive industry in a headlock, because they can't compete on Tesla's price. Tesla is having the Model Y and Model 3 selling here in Europe like crazy. It was the best-selling car, the Model Y, of any kind last year, and is still doing very, very well for the numbers we have so far. And here in my country, it's still the best-selling model in the first 2 months here, because the price of these vehicles are getting just so competitive when you compare to even to ICE vehicles, that is just not even comparable to the performance or technology that's in the Tesla. But I think, the other guys, they don't even earn money on their cars yet, and Tesla is holding the bar low on the prices, and this is really putting them in a big predicament, that they can't raise the prices, because then nobody's gonna want to buy their EVs, and so they have to kind of follow Tesla down, but they're already losing money on them, and that's probably why we see some of the old guys having a bit of trouble with their demand for their EVs, as we see Ford and GM and Volkswagen is cutting back on their targets because they didn't see as huge as demand as they thought. And if you compare like the Mark-E to the Model Y, I do understand why. It is much more expensive, especially over here in Europe as well. The Model Y is just so competitive on price. It is kind of ridiculous, and the other guys just don't know what to do.
Okay, yeah, that's a big impact that Tesla has had. Michael, you have been talking about this for a long time, but you even go further. You've been saying that you think that Tesla might actually even do more price cuts. Why don't you tell the folks you're thinking there?
Right. So just staying on the Model Y for a moment, I was curious, why is it so popular in Europe? Forever global automakers have had this dream of developing one vehicle that would sell in markets worldwide. And that, what appealed to Americans didn't appeal to Europeans, and what appealed to Europeans maybe not in Asia. But today we see the Model Y attractive in China, Asia, United States, and Europe. So I was going to ask, what is the key attraction of Tesla and the Model Y to European buyers? Then we'll come back to that Tesla strategy of being very aggressive on prices.
So I might answer something about this because I'm located in Germany, and since the Model Y also sold like hotcakes here as well, and to see that the German market or the European market on the whole is more about the compact cars, the smaller cars, but also since the Porsche Cayenne actually it is also SUV, and the SUV segment pretty much also had a lot of sales here in Europe as well, especially in Germany. So there is a demand for those hybrid SUVs, not hybrid as a propulsion system, of course, but those, how are they called? Hybrid SUVs. Crossover SUVs. Yeah, that's the right term. And that's why I'm not surprised that the Model Y did so well, because if you compare it, you want to have storage, you want to drive stuff around. And one interesting category is that I don't know how the category is called in English, but in Germany, actually, those cars with the longer trunk. I think station wagons is the right term. Yeah. Those are super popular in Germany, and I think that this kind of replaces the station wagon as well. So some buyers that want to go electric, but there is no station wagon available, would pick the Model Y. So that's my theory on that one. But that's just Germany. So overall in Europe, of course, France, for example, also smaller cars, they tend to be there. We have a lot of S-classes here in Germany as well, so a little bit bigger cars. Big engines as well are very popular here. BMWs, for example. So I think that's one of the reasons why the Model Y was so popular here as well.
Especially in Germany, German customers have a reputation for loving their homegrown brands and being, a little bit reluctant to try non-German cars, especially American cars. So here you have a complete and dramatic break with tradition. Hey, we're embracing an American car. We love this thing, and we'll take them over the German alternatives. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Absolutely. Especially, in the past, it was always about the big blocks. The big blocks were horrible here in Germany. They're not efficient. The Germans don't like this. And it was the case all the time. But in electric, it's different. If you compare just the numbers, because in Germany there are many engineers, and they have pride in their brands, and BMW and Mercedes, of course, VW, they love their brands. Some VW buyers will only buy the VW Golf, and you cannot get them away from this. So they're very stubborn in that sense. But they also are engineers most of the time, or that's pretty broad, and they look at numbers. And if they compare the electric cars to one another, and they have those hiccups with the software, with VW, for example, it's not hard for them to jump over to the better solution. And also Chinese manufacturer come also there into the picture then. And I think that's why they just compare and then they jump over. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
so. It's the technology, it's the product, it's the functionality, also the price. Lars, you're talking about maybe the price is a factor too.
Yeah, I think last year they really pushed down the price to levels that nobody could match, and finally we had a product that, like Jan said, could replace our station wagons. And I believe SUV is kind of, I can't remember the numbers, but the biggest market on the planet. And here in Europe, I just think they definitely hit a soft spot, like an EV that could do all the things you want from an EV with fast charging, long range, and all that good stuff. But at the same time, you didn't compromise on anything. You have tons of storage space and a really good family car. So I think they just hit the sweet spot at a time when the others could not scale up as fast as they can. And they suddenly became competitive to something like the Skoda Enyaq and stuff like that. Because I have friends that have bought the Skoda Enyaq before and is really happy happy with the car. But after the price cuts, like, yeah, if I had to buy again, I would buy a Tesla Model Y, because not now it doesn't make sense to save like $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the price was before. So, yeah.
So, Michael, why were you asking that question?
Yes. Just fascinated, having worked in the auto industry for so long. It was always like the ambition to develop a car that everyone liked around the world. And it seems like Tesla's the first company to have managed that, to achieve that. So how did that happen? Well, one of the factors is price. And what we're seeing in particular out of China, just remind ourselves, China today has capacity to build 40 million cars a year. That's half of global demand. Imagine. Next biggest producer, I think, is Japan and the United States at 10 million. So China produces 3x what the next biggest country produces. Then they themselves have demand for about 25 million. So 40 million capacity, 25 at home. And they have an extra 15 million units of capacity. What are they doing with that? 5 million for export. And then they have this overhang of 10 million. You know the answer. Massive overcapacity, price wars, prices coming down, and it's a pressure cooker. The Chinese auto companies I talk to say it's a bloodbath at home. There's nobody making any money. We need oxygen, and oxygen is global markets. So we've seen this massive push by the likes of BYD, SAIC, Geely companies, Volvo, Polestar, find us global markets as quickly as possible. And oh, by the way, guess what? When we go into those global markets, we will be extremely cost competitive because we've already learned how to drive down costs at home. So people talk about disruption in the auto industry, software-defined vehicles or batteries or cutting-edge batteries, battery supply chains, infotainment systems. To me, the single biggest disruptor for the next 36 months will be the prices coming out of China and the pressure that puts on legacy automakers. So Tesla has a home in China and will leverage every bit of that to be price competitive globally. And whenever they can, wherever they can, they will bank on this price advantage to take market share and win more customers in markets around the world. I think this is just beginning, and it's going to have a massive impact on the industry worldwide.
Do you guys actually think that there's going to be more price cuts by Tesla? Their margins are compressed. People are thinking it's going to be even, they're debating whether or not the next Q4 or Q3 is going to go back up again. But some people think that in order for them to get the 2.1 million to over even 2 million this year, they're going to need more price cuts. So is that what you're saying, Michael?
Right. Nobody likes to look at and to project price cuts for Tesla. I mean, myself included. At the same time, I feel as though, and this is pure speculation, that Elon saw how intensely competitive things are in China. And he hired Tom Zhu to be his sort of chief operations officer, moved him to Texas and said, all right, the most competitive market in the world today is China. How does that play out? And should we apply that strategy to markets around the world if we want to be successful and drive out competitors? And I think he's adopted that strategy and saying, I'm not so concerned about short-term pricing or my stock price. I want to win and I want scale in order to survive and be huge and massive and go to Mars. If this is what it takes, this is what it takes. That's where I'm coming from.
What do you guys think?
I mean, that's where I would kind of pick up on that. I think this is about scale. I think every business that Elon decides to enter in, there's one common component, and that is scale, and that's creating scale. When you create scale, you create efficiencies, you create cost leverage, and you give yourself an ability to really take that technology and get it to places you would have never been able to get it before if you were niche. So if you look at his entry into auto, if you look at the entry into space, like the volume of aircraft that are being built and the rate that they're building aircraft and the rate that they're doing these satellite launches on the Falcon boosters and the rate that they want to go at with Starship. Look at Starlink. Look how many satellites have been deployed. Does anybody have a satellite network that's anywhere close to that, to being able to blanket the globe and provide internet access everywhere? So you keep going business to business, stationary energy as well. That's ramping and that's scaling. He's going to put that in every geography. He's going to scale and put the source of supply where the consumers are. He's starting in the biggest markets, US, Europe, China, and then now he's going and looking at rest of Asia, other parts of Europe, and then eventually, I mean, South America is starting to ramp up. I think the Chinese have started to take hold on Central and South America earlier than maybe others, but I think there's a big infrastructure catch up that has to happen there as well for EVs to scale. But I go back, picking up on Michael's comment, I think everything's about scale. So to your question about pricing and price cuts, it's logical to believe that there will be more coming. It's also logical to believe that there is more room to go on COGS. And COGS is very difficult to predict on a quarter by quarter basis. It's even difficult to predict when you're inside of the company, much less when we're analysts and we're outside of the company. But from a trend perspective, over the next year, I can see them continuing to bring COGS down. I think this quarter specifically that they're going to have some headwinds if there is a bit of a production drop off, that's going to create some resistance. And there's some issues site by site. The Model 3 ramp in Fremont has provided some headwinds. The Cybertruck coming up. There's some things that are going to be providing some headwinds. PPI is going in the opposite direction now. It was disinflationary before, and now it's accelerating a bit, but not too bad. But I've even looked at some of the commodities of late. Steel, copper are starting to now edge up and starting to move beyond their 50-day and into their 200-day category. So commodities are starting to move up PPI. So you're going to have some negative pressure on COGS maybe in the near term. But over the next couple of years, Tesla is going to be building Model 3s and Model Ys and Cybertrucks. And I believe that they're going to be able to take their COGS down considerably on those products. I don't think they're done. These things of it's very difficult. They were talking about how difficult it was when they were doing the October earnings call, and then they printed, a pretty significant COGS decline in that Q4. But yeah, near-term headwinds. But I think the price reductions will continue. I think that's a current market dynamic. This market the auto market is a bit offsides. It was undersupplied a bit due to COVID, but it was overcapacitized that whole time. Michael talked about China. There's overcapacity issues. The peak in the U.S. was 21 million units, I think, in 2017, and now we're talking about 15 million units this year. So you can look region by region. It's overcapacity, and then it's offsides in terms of the product mix. People want EVs. EVs are growing it's considerably. ICE plus hybrid is going to be actually in a decline in the U.S. this year, and EV is going to continue to grow. EV is growing much faster in China, rest of Asia, and Europe. In U.S. is lagging, but I think the bigger automakers are a bit offsides in terms of their portfolio mix. Too many models, not enough of them being EVs. And then the final thing I want to talk about is that whole thing that Michael was talking about is making the product that everybody wants. It's so important because you talk about automakers, you talk about how many units they ship per year, but the real important thing for volume leverage is to get that volume leverage off of one SKU. And if you can get it off of that one SKU, that one model, then you can drive volume leverage in all the parts that go in that model. So if you're an automaker and you're shipping 10 million units a year, but it's across 50 different models, your volume leverage is not as good as a Tesla doing 2 million units, where they're doing a majority of them off of the Model Y in this case, for example. So Tesla is growing this EV volume and doing that volume growth off of a small number of SKUs. And that dynamic is critical. And that's one of the reasons why Tesla can continue to participate in this pricing war, however you call it, and until it gets to the point where it can start introducing its software services to take margins back up.
Okay, well, yeah, so I've got a question for you guys, and specifically you, Lars and Jan. So two questions. So what is the motivation of Tesla? The first one is margin, and the other one is like, are they interested in killing off competitors? So margins, would they just keep cutting prices, and because they want volume versus margin? But then they want margin, they need cash, because now we're talking about a robot AI play. So, what is their motivation for margin? On the other side is, do they really want to kill off these other car manufacturers? they don't necessarily want to kill off the EVs, but they will. At the same time, they do want to have price parity or very low prices to be able to kill off the gas cars, right? To transfer that over. How do you see this playing in Europe when it's already so tenuous with all these automakers there already on the brink? What will happen? And what do you think Tesla might do? You want to start, Lars?
Yeah, sure. I think it's going to be. I completely agree with Jeff that they will continue the price cut and Michael that they will do this because this is also part of Tesla's mission, right? To accelerate this thing, so they're not going to slow down, and the more they can accelerate their own growth, they will also reach the economy of scale on the Berlin and the Texas factory. So I think they will continue to push down the prices, and because they don't want to scale down their Berlin factory again on the way up in the ramp. So that would be a terrible mistake for them. So if they have to, they can lower the prices, because we have to remember, even though their margins has been dropping over the last year, they are still earning money on their vehicles. And they do have, in my opinion, a very strong financial point right now, where if they don't earn money the next year, they have $30 billion in the bank. We know automakers that are way worse off right now with EV startups that has half of that amount in the bank. And Tesla is actually the one earning money. So if they really need to, they could definitely lower the prices. And I still think Tesla also want as many vehicles on the road as possible, because for Tesla, compared to everybody else, they are actually collecting a lot of data for Tesla to work on their full self-driving software as well. So I can only see Tesla's mission and what they want to achieve and do, that they will continue to push as hard as they can and to scale up as fast as they can as possible, both to accelerate the world to EVs, but also to get the volume of the factories to keep on going up. So as Jeff is talking about, the cost of goods sold can come down, and the economy of scale of those factories become better and better all the time. And at the same time, they want to collect all that data with full self-driving. And we have to remember, here in Europe, we have the same kind of full self-driving beta we have had for the last 5 years. I had the car. There's been some small incremental changes and improvements, and not so much shadow breaking anymore, but in basically the beta I have in my old Tesla Model 3 is still the same. So if Tesla can come with that beta over here, as we heard about maybe next year, I think that will change the big perception for Tesla over here, and the demand for that software will go up dramatically and bring in some much needed revenue for Tesla there.
My view on this, let's put it this way. I think that's a good analogy. When did Mercedes invest in, or did it hold a stake of Tesla, or had a lot of shares of Tesla? When was that? Around 2014, something like this is in my mind right now.
Yeah,
okay.
Sold it,
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And then they sold it. So, okay. Talking about this. Now, VW, when did they have contact together and talked with each other? Wait a second. That was with Herbert Diess, and that died off with Herbert Diess. So we had so many Tesla killers coming left and right, going on and on. Elon waited for that something will happen. But what's happening? We have China, BYD. They are printing the cars. They are the ones that already took the spot of the German OEMs, for example, in his mind, in the projections. And that's why I think they are all out of the picture now, kind of. It's sad, and especially when you see what they are doing. So these competitors are out of the picture. Okay, so we have to compete with BYD now, more or less. I mean, BYD also supplies them, so there is more of a partnership, a friendly partnership, but of course they will be competitive to one another. And I think this is a big point, that Tesla wants to gain market share and be prepared for the time when the demand of EVs go into this region, especially for internationalization. That's very, very important, because remember, in the US, you have those big incentives. In Europe, they cut the incentives. So they are doing everything they can to stop this wave. But but this also hurts VW at the same time. So now they are pedaling back again. So it's a huge mess there. So you also have to remember that, for example, in Germany, we are actually a low-wage country. I know in the comments people will be riled up about this. I talked about this several times. The average income here in Germany is 38,000 euros, actually. That's not too high if you think about it. And this is pretty normal here that people buy secondhand cars, especially in Europe as well, because it's so damn expensive. So it makes sense for internationalization, also for a market like Europe, to lower prices still. And the Model 3, for me at least, for example, I paid around 50,000 for my car, which of course with financing included and taxes and everything included. So this is a lot of money for me still. And I work in Switzerland, so that should tell you something. I'm not working in Germany, so I earn a little bit more than the average income here, let's say that. And it's still expensive. So that's something to have to keep in mind, because also our taxes are pretty high and stuff like this. So our expenses are high. That's why many cars in Germany are company cars. And we need lower prices, and that's why I think Tesla will go that route, because they are competing with BYD, not with Mercedes and those guys, because the EV will be way cheaper than an internal combustion engine car. And what you also have to think about is they want to have this in everyone's pockets and then sell software. That's their goal, and that's how they make cash. Lars said a great point about this. They want to get those things into the hands of everybody, and I mean cars with that. And that's why I think Tesla's strategy makes absolutely sense to lower prices. But what will also be very bad for the market is, of course, the leasing companies. They will suffer a lot with that decision, because then many leasing companies will actually get Tesla out of their portfolio because it's too expensive, because when they have a contract, people will cancel their contracts or something, and then why don't they go directly to Tesla? Now, why do we have a leasing company? It doesn't make sense anymore. Or Hertz, for example, and stuff like this. So that will get worse. But eventually they will come back, because they're the best EVs. What can you say? So, yeah, this will have an impact. But I think the strategy makes sense, because they want to sell FSD. They need a lot of data. They have to scale up. It's the only thing they can do, I think. That makes sense.
A few months ago, Elon tweeted out something to the effect, he thought a lot about the auto industry and competing for the next 5 years, and he said extreme scale is where he landed on. The goal is extreme scale. Okay, there's our answer. How do we get there? Whatever it takes. That's one. And then his experience inside China, the competition there is so brutal. You guys may know this expression, but when we come to negotiate in the West, we talk about win-win. And then you go to China, and they've learned that that's familiar to us and kind of comforting to hear someone say, oh, win-win. But in Chinese lexicon, win-win means I win twice and you win zero. Okay, so they're really tough when it comes to negotiation. And then taking a step further, I was talking to Chinese friends. I said, yeah, but don't the Chinese have their own expression for when you come to compete with somebody? They said, yes, we do. It's called 你死我活. You die, I win. Okay, so while they're saying win-win across the table, they're actually thinking you die, I live. And so it sounds a little bit harsh or brutal, but the world should get ready for Chinese. After all, the biggest manufacturer of cars, the biggest manufacturer of EVs, are the biggest single EV maker, BYD now. So it's coming to your neighborhood, and Elon understands this and says, okay, if that's the way it's going to be, then let's not pretend the price isn't important. It is. And he's ready to go to battle with price cuts.
Can I add something here, because I think that's an important point that I also wanted to dive into for 1 second, because China has a lot of oversupply right now with the EVs, and they need to push them out, like you said before. I found that very interesting what you said, because the test of the BYD Seal in comparison to the Model 3 Highland that we now have, and I own one, so I know what we are talking about. And my background is from design, so I'm really much looking into user experience and stuff like this, and how it feels especially with the interfaces, and what automations you have in the car. And let me tell you, the BYD Seal is an Android phone versus an Apple phone. I'm not Android bashing here, so if you use an Android phone, I don't mean to bash I just wanted to make the point that Apple has a refined interface. Apple has a very nice ecosystem that's very easy for the user to engage with, and it's easy, simple, and very clever. And Android is a little bit more customized. You can still do your stuff. So for niche programs, it's a good thing. And I kind of see that the same way. Android phones flooded the market the same way they did, and Tesla also wants to go in mass production, of course, and they want to get to the same numbers all the time and still grow with them together. But there's a big difference. And also what's very important is internationalization, because coming to the European market is actually pretty hard. So when they are rushing their cars out, they will have quality control issues. And if those cars come to Germany, they will be sent back again. And that's also one thing. And I think Tesla, of course, the success of Tesla is due to Giga Shanghai, of course. I mean, 50% of the cars sold are from Shanghai.
That's right.
Yeah. So that means this should also tell you something. But so this means China is a huge factor for the success of Tesla. But I think still that they are kind of 2 steps ahead with quality control still. And that's the thing that the other OEMs from China still want to go to, but I think they're way better in internationalization of their cars, especially for the European market, which is a benchmark for the rest of the world.
Yeah. Let's remember, BYD started as a battery. BYD started as a battery company. Its DNA is battery, and now it's moving into making cars and learning software. So you're absolutely right. There's a gap there still.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, they still have to prove that they can enter the European market for real, because so far, like MG4 is kind of made a big splash last year, top 5 of best-selling EVs in Europe, but BYD was really nowhere to be seen. Also because their nice Han EV, in my country, it's almost twice the price of a Model 3. It's insane. They are not going to sell anybody with that price. And but the BYD Seal, we will see how it sells. But they still really have to come into the market. And I think the prices of the Model 3, we will see if they drop them, Tesla. Because if they do, because already in my mind, the Model 3 standard range has as much range as my old Tesla Model 3 long range. So the range is actually quite good on this one. It's not like when you see the legacy OEMs, they have a starting price. It's always crappy range, no charging speed, whatever. It's not really a good car. But the Tesla Model 3 is really a good car, and you get everything included. You know, the safety assist feature and all the software and full self-driving screen in the back, ventilated seat and all that. And in my country, if you take the ID.3 Pro S, it's more expensive than the Tesla Model 3 standard range, and there's just no comparison. And they use 20 kilowatt hours more batteries to get the same kind of range in a smaller car. There's just no way for these guys to be competitive, and definitely not cost competitive compared to what Tesla is offering here. So they're going to have an uphill battle against Tesla in Europe.
Okay, so the problem with the comparison between Apple and Android versus Tesla and the Chinese automakers, for example, Jeff and I have talked a lot about this, is Tesla is very willing and very vocally asking for partnerships, and they want to do partnerships, versus Apple said, hey, we're a closed garden, right? And so let's talk partnerships. I want to ask each one of you, because each of you are pretty well experts in this space, about potential partnerships. So let's start with BYD partnering with Tesla. Michael, what's the chances that BYD already partners with Tesla, right? They called each other. They just last month, they each executive said very nice things about each other. BYD already supplies the batteries. Could there be other partnerships, or there's no way? Tesla, BYD is going to do everything on their own. Like, they don't have an autonomy, a credible autonomy path. What's your thinking about that?
It feels like they're buddies, friendly, definitely respectful of each other for now, while at the same time each is eyeing the other, because BYD in recent months has introduced some upscale brands to go to higher price points, as high as, just a month ago they released this supercar priced at $233,000 and a big SUV starting at $160,000. So BYD definitely has ambitions to go up, at the same time that Tesla has ambitions to be much more aggressive with the Model 2, right into the heart of where BYD dominates today. So it's almost as if they're neighbors, they're eyeing each other. Yeah, we're friends, we're partners for now, I think. And then the partnership they do have with batteries, I see as, maybe a short-term solution for Tesla, that they needed the LFP batteries for Europe while Berlin was scaling up, and that may or may not grow. So I'm not sure that there's a strong inclination by either side to be close partners. I think they're rivals that respect each other and don't want to upset each other. So they say, yeah, we're good. We're brothers. Tasha Gummer, bonjour Didi. That's my brother over there. So that's my take. I think having spent time with people at Tesla and BYD, definitely underlying respect, but also a realistic check, like, where is this thing going? Ultimately, we're probably going to be competitors.
Yeah, and then Jeff, you're the expert in partnerships. You know the most. You've done this already at the Fortune 100. What do you expect to happen? Not beyond BYD, just anything.
Yeah, I do expect Tesla to forge partnerships with multiple OEMs. They're not playing the role of the walled garden, starting with supercharging, and I see that happening. It's just a question. To me, it's a matter of when, and it's a matter of what components in the chain that are going to be involved. But I do see that happening because it's going to be forced. It goes back to the conversation we were having 10 or 15 minutes ago. Is the costs are going to continue to come down, and the number of those that can survive in that climate is going to reduce. And they're either going to go out of business or they're going to forge partnerships together, where there's companies with regional competencies that are more complementary that either merge together, or there's acquisitions, or there's pieces of businesses sold off. But I think, as the auto industry emerges from, what's happened over the last couple of years, and some of these players that have stepped back from EV think they're going to step in and just be at the right pace and rate right away and just like ramp right into it. I think they're going to be in for a rude awakening, because Tesla is not standing still, and some of the other competitors that are in EV are not standing still as well. But it's not Tesla's world totally. But in terms of, I would say, on the software front, both on the software and Jan was talking about this whole globalization piece. It's one of the few barriers I've talked about for the Chinese to go global. I think the globalization piece is a big deal. Tesla has a software platform that is globalized, is universally recognized, and runs on a simple architecture with very little input. And that Tesla operating system is going to, I think, it's going to grow exponentially here really quick as things like Grok and AI are going to be implemented in the vehicle. Other folks are doing this. VW's got a partnership with a company, but it's kind of a little bit clunky. It's a little bit, it's all over the place. Tesla really has a lead here. So yes, I think Tesla is going to kind of spearhead several partnerships. It started with supercharging, and it could go multiple hardware components. It can go to full self-driving software, hardware, most likely. The operating system in the vehicle is pretty tightly linked to the rest of the controls in the vehicle and so forth. So that's a little bit more difficult to do. But I would say that for me, the priorities would be where Tesla is building these multi-decade advantages, which is on full self-driving hardware, the cost structure, and the span and scope of it in terms of the miles per day it's getting. The hardware, the software behind that would be, to me, the first couple of priorities. Continue to expand the partnerships in supercharging. Remember, people talk about the Chinese coming in and dumping all these EVs everywhere. Where are they going to charge? Who's building the charging infrastructure for that? And these are the things that Tesla has been thinking about again for more than a decade and actually putting the work and putting their own dollars behind. So long story short, there'll continue to be partnerships. I think we can do a whole show on BYD. I've got a completely different perspective on them from working with them and knowing them personally for a long period of time. I think of it as a little bit differently. I think they've ramped up into being a great global player, but I think there's going to be limitations on what they can do. And up to this point, on the partnership with Tesla, they've really been somewhat complementary. BYD is really focused on China and now South America, Central America and so forth. They've stayed out of the US. They've stayed out of the Tesla price points where the 3 and the Y, the heart of where the 3 and the Y are. And they've even been vocal about that. But in terms of I think they're going to have some pretty difficult barriers to overcome, but I'm not one of those that's in the camp that it's never going to happen. It's going to be, what's the regulatory side going to look like? What's the political side going to look like? And then where's Tesla going to be 3 or 5 years from now in terms of being able to deal with this competition? I still think that they're continuing to leapfrog even the Chinese in many respects. And I still think that they're ahead, but that gap could be closing.
I see where you're coming from. So partnership in a sense, more like the superchargers network is opened up to other OEMs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'm not sure what Tesla would gain from a partnership. What does it need that others have that it doesn't have? But I think your point is, if I understand it correctly, is Tesla's leading in certain categories, and they're saying, "Hey, we'll open up to you to our competitors." In this case, yeah, I mean
they're leading in certain categories, and I think they go back to the mission of the company. They want to get electrified transportation out there as much as possible. The way to do that is to have the most competitive cost structure and have the most competitive feature offerings, and and if they could partner on aspects that allow the transition to accelerate to EV, I think they'll partner on those various, whether it makes vehicles safer. Whether it makes the whole experience with charging easier, because right now that is a barrier to buying EVs in North America. It was a barrier, was the charging network, and that's just now opening up. So yeah, I think they'll partner along the vector of, does it drive an acceleration of the EV adoption curve, and if it does, have at it.
So I want to ask you, Lars. So Jeff and I just did a show on Monday. We talked about how partnerships typically happen, right? So the first thing is the company says, I'm going to do it myself. Volkswagen says, I'm going to build 2,000 software engineers. We're going to do software ourselves. Then when that fails, they'll say, hey, I'm going to partner with you. And I think we heard today that Honda and Honda and Nissan are deciding to, let's combine our forces together. I'm sure a number of these European have formed together partnerships for supercharger. And then when that fails, then they go, well, let's partner with a low-cost provider. I think Michael explained this really well to me last time I interviewed him, where, the company like, we've seen it, quite a number of them partner and invest as joint ventures with these Chinese providers, have them build them at lower cost. When are we going to see the European legacy automakers in both the US and Europe to finally just buckle down and say, I got to partner with Tesla?
Yeah. Well, with the software part, I think it's going to be a while, because that's a proud little moment there. And especially for Volkswagen, that has been investing so many $1 billion in Carrot, the software company, and has had just an epic fail with that. But I think if they can't make it work with the Chinese partnerships they're trying to do now, and get some quality software out of there, because I think people really always underestimate how difficult it is to make software and how insanely difficult it is to make great software. Like, we know the big software company, they kind of make it look so easy, and the user interface in your Tesla is working so nicely, and just seems like, why can't the other just do this? But to make great software is really, really difficult. So at some point, if they can't make the partnership with the Chinese companies and software companies and so on work, I think they have burned their fingers enough by trying to become a software company overnight themselves and find out you can't just buy yourself to this. You have to get some of the best software engineers in the world to come work for you. Like there was a CFO of a German artificial intelligence company here in Europe that said that when Tesla made their AI day, that it was pretty much game over because they're going to suck in all the talent, because she could do more with 2 exceptional software engineers than she could do with 50 great ones. And I think that is what the old legacy automakers is also failing to see. Is definitely, we can see with Volkswagen, was it 5,000 software engineers or something they got in to work?
How about 8?
8,000. It was a lot of people. And Tesla has 150 working on their full self-driving AI team. So it's really about, it's so difficult to get to create good software. And if they can't make it work with the other guys, I think, they might come crawling to Tesla, but it's going to be a very difficult pill to swallow, I think, for their pride to do it. But Tesla has been saying, and Elon has been saying, they have been open to licensing it out to other automakers. But just like in the beginning with the charging infrastructure, Tesla was also open to partner with other people as long as they wanted to help pay for the build of the charging network, but nobody wanted to help them out. But now they can see Tesla kind of did it and didn't just die and go away. So now they can see the benefits of it, because we have just seen so many stories about people getting the Mercedes EQS, and it's a good electric vehicle with a lot of range. But when you come to an Electrify America charger and it only charges with 50 kilowatt or something like that, it's just a terrible experience compared if you bought a much cheaper Tesla Model S and have a great charging experience. So I think we will see the same thing with software eventually, because I'm sorry, I just don't expect these legacy automakers to become software companies, good software companies. And Tesla is just moving the goalpost so far, because they also creating their own AI software and making this full self-driving software they're creating. And I just don't think that a legacy automaker is going to be able to create that kind of software, because they are just not software companies. Tesla is a software company. And I think even as that were mentioned here, that BYD, I believe the CEO once said, and not that long ago, that he didn't really believe in full self-driving. And I really think I'm a big believer in full self-driving cars coming sooner rather than later. So if that happens, I can see that BYD will be forced to join with somebody like Tesla to survive as a big OEM, because if they don't have full self-driving software in their cars in, let's say, just 10 years out in the future, the cars are going to be pretty much irrelevant at that point. So I think they're going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's my turn now to talk about this, because oh God, where did I start? My neurons were firing when Lars was speaking. So it's about if Tesla will partner maybe with legacy OEMs, right? Was the question again? So I can adjust a little bit. Correct. Yeah, especially maybe with German OEMs. Lars mentioned this software carrot mess we had with VW, and I think we should start again with a small anecdote here. A lot of talent in the 90s, actually, in the software space, moved over to Silicon Valley. Why? Because Germany almost immediately taxed everything they could get their hands on, and they didn't let the market, didn't let those startups grow great enough. They just went with regulations and red taped this thing shut, and they said, okay, you know what? We don't know if this works out. Let's go to Silicon Valley. Also, one thing you have to remember, where were design thinking ideation methods developed? Not in Germany. Why? Because our culture is so different. We are not doing this the way. We're too perfectionistic. It's also due to our language. We're very specific with our language. You can explain everything to the nuts and bolts in detail with curvature and everything in one sentence. But we cannot simplify things. We cannot break it down. We have difficulties with kind of with this legacy on our shoulders here, if I like VW, if I'm looking from the perspective of VW, I mean, they come from the Industrial Revolution more or less. And the view where this came from was that the customer is at the end of the line receiving just the product you pump out, kind of. And they are very, very focused on their product, not on the customer. And customer centricity is in software development key. That's the first thing you think about is the customer. And you have to iterate and iterate and iterate. And also how decisions are made in Germany is totally different. Think about it. It's like we have meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings and board meetings. And then we have a big decision in the end. But then we follow through with this plan. We don't really iterate and iterate and iterate because this means more meetings until the decision is made again. And that's also why the Daimler Chrysler fusion didn't work out. It's exactly because of things like that. But I don't want to go into detail there. But it's pretty interesting. It's a cultural thing. And also pride plays a huge role. Legacy plays a huge role that you have this pride in your vehicles. Germans also show pride with their cars. Since Second World War, kind of patriotism is gone. For a reason, because it was horrible what happened there. And my theory is, it's a loose theory, but I think many Germans kind of have their patriotism in the German brands. They say, I drive a VW, that's my pride, I can drive around with that. And that's like a safe patriotism they can have, at least. That's just a theory. It's maybe you can write in the comments here what you think about this. But and it's interesting to see. And I think I have here now the percentage of the holding, for example, for VW. 50% is 53% is the Porsche Automobile Holding SE. Then we have 20% State of Lower Saxony, 17% Qatar Holding LLC, and 9.7% the rest. The Porsche P family board is huge and stuff like this. So VW is out of the picture with any partnerships because I think this died down with Herbert Diess. And he was too verbal, too open with also the flaws of VW, and that's not seen great with the Porsche P family. So they saw them off, and they placed the CEO of Porsche, of course, in his seat. And it makes sense. The Porsche at least makes decent software, makes a decent product. It fuses together, but it's a luxury segment. So for the mass market, we don't have any company that can join with Tesla in that sense. That's why I think the Chinese companies will replace VW in that case, I would say, because the talks were kind of open. And I think that was a good approach, but now it's kind of died down. So this is one thing I wanted to add there. Yeah.
Yeah, with the mass market segment, you said is kind of open in terms of being claimed by local OEMs. How are the German people, the Swiss, the Danes, how are they receiving Chinese EVs? Like, what do they think of them? Is there any kind of like prevailing rhetoric or feedback on them so far? It's been I think we're a couple months into it.
I would say the French have a different view for quality control. The people from Italy as well, and it's a little bit different there. I think the Germans here again are kind of a benchmark also for Europe in that sense. They shielded the market pretty good from Toyota. Trying to, in the 70s, they tried to really very, very aggressive with their productions. And the same thing, quality, look at the quality. This is not the panel gaps. We've seen the same thing from Tesla. But guess what? A Toyota is pretty good now. Is anybody hesitant with buying a Toyota here in Germany? I don't think so. The same will be with Tesla. For me, the kicker was the Model 3 Highland. It is a different beast. It was smart that they released it right into the European market at first with China together, and China first, then Europe. It just makes sense. Many people compared the Model 3 that I drive and they sat in it and they're like, wait a second, that's almost... It looks kind of like, it's almost like a sports car. Is that a Porsche kind of thing? Where are the pedal gaps? The quality control improved significantly. And the upgrades they did, the features you have, at some point you can't deny anything. And now with the Model 3 ludicrous version that are coming out, who are they competing with? BMW. They're going to kick them out of the park with this one. And Germans really look at the Nürburgring and really look at the racing numbers and or the times, the lap times. And I mean, you can brag about your M3 on the red light as long as you want, but when a Model 3 ludicrous comes around the corner and smokes you, you're done, because Germans also like that. They like this competitiveness in that space. They're very conservative and everything, but with performance, that's where you get them. And Tesla will get them.
How about 100%. The Chinese, though? How are they receiving, Xpeng, NIO, BYD? How are they being received?
So I would say that... so this is just a loose temperature from my side. So take everything with a grain of salt, because I didn't look at the numbers. I don't have any customer feedback or anything in mind now that I can say, but just my impression that I have. So take this with a grain of salt. But I would say that in comparison, the Chinese manufacturers aren't received as well. They still have the stigma of low quality control, because the average German, for example, doesn't really realize that Chinese actually are better in quality control, because VW and all the OEMs went to China and trained them how to do it, and now they can do it, and now or not trained them how to do it. I think they have different sources of course. I mean, this would be a little bit from the high horse. I don't want to say it like this. I mean, but what the point I wanted to make is that, this changed, but the average Joe in Germany would say, no, it's a Chinese car. So they still have hesitation with that. And that's why Polestar is was successful for some time, or perceived pretty good here in Germany, because it's from Volvo, but it's from Geely, actually, of course. And, the Smart One is also a great car from Mercedes. No, it's actually Geely. And now Mercedes also in talks kind of with Geely about the EQS. I've heard something there. I'm not sure if that's still up, but I've heard something. So Mercedes doesn't produce their own cars. What's happening there? And they scale back. So, interesting points there. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And same question for you, Lars. How are the Chinese being received? Relative to Tesla, and any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's still this kind of looking a bit bad at the Chinese EV brands, but I think Xpeng and NIO is kind of looked at like, okay, they can actually build premium electric vehicles. I have had some friends around talking about the Xpeng and say, wow, have you seen the Xpeng? So, yeah, that's a really nice looking car and has some great performance. But there is still like a little bit of lag and hesitation towards the Chinese models, and I think Jan has a great point there, because we do see the MG4 did very well last year in Europe, but I'm not sure that everybody knows that it's a Chinese electric vehicle, because it's a good old English brand, right? So maybe that's helping them, and maybe that is what BYD is why they are not getting the same momentum as I actually thought they would do, because the Dolphin is coming in as a very reasonable price, definitely the numbers here in my country, but it's not selling that much just yet. They have grown quite significantly here in 2024 compared to 2023, but they're nowhere near the top five or anything with the models with that one either. So I still think there are many people that don't even know what BYD is. If I go out to the public, they won't know what are you talking about? BYD? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, and one more quick follow up, and then I'm sorry. When you live in Europe and you decide to go buy a Chinese EV, are there concerns about like, where am I going to service this? How, what's that whole experience going to be like? What if I have an accident? Where do I take this thing? Are consumers concerned about that, or does that come up in conversation in terms of a barrier to entry? Yeah,
well, at least in my country, they do sell them through dealers, so that's all taken care of by them. So I don't really think people in my country anyway think too much about that, because they just go to the dealer as they always do. But now they have an electric Chinese vehicle there as well, and they can service them at their service centers and so on. Yeah,
I can say something to the German market here. That's interesting. it is a concern actually with the service, because also with Tesla service as well. Where do you have to drive when you get this into service? In South Germany, you have to drive to Stuttgart to do that. So there aren't so many hubs here to get your car serviced. And I mean, it's a 2-hour drive for you Americans. It's laughable to even talk about this. But for a German, it's a huge distance to do that. And because we're so used to going to just a workshop near me or partner workshops of the brand, and this isn't as built out yet. Of course, this infrastructure of the servicing infrastructure is not built out yet. And that's also a big thing that you have to get those concerns away from the average buyer to realize, oh, okay, you don't have to service your car as often. That's also a huge point that many Germans I talk to really don't know. That, oh yeah, I've replaced the windshield wiper fluid a couple of times. That's my service that I did, and yeah, so that's actually a thing here. Yeah, I would say the servicing concern at least, and for the Chinese it might be even worse. Yeah. Because then, where do I bring that? Maybe also to the dealer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think like in Denmark we don't have automakers at all, so I don't even think we are very loyal to just the German brands. But so we also have Volvo, and that has been a real darling here in Denmark as well. But so I just think that in Denmark we just go for the best value for money, and I do believe that is why the Tesla Model Y is continuing to be the best-selling model by far. And last year it was the best-selling model in our entire history. Nobody has ever sold that many of one model in our country. I think it's it's just bananas how well received Tesla has been here. But I think all the panel gaps and all that is kind of the old story, and Tesla was not that popular back then, and then we raised the taxes in 2016 or something like that, so Tesla dipped and was kind of out of the picture for a couple of years, and then they came back with the Model 3 and everything started from scratch there. So I don't think people really know Tesla that well, the story before it and all the panel gaps, so they just know the Model Y coming from Germany, built in Germany, where in my opinion is quite a well-built car. And everybody now knows Tesla if they're looking for EVs, and they're going to compare. So, yeah.
If not Tesla, who's number 2 in your markets when it comes, say someone wants a Tesla, it's not available for whatever reason. Who do you think they go to next in their minds?
At first, it was Renault, was actually pretty good. Peugeot not, but the Renault Zoe, for example, the smaller cars were perceived well. The BMW i3 was also a great selling car here, still niche, but at first. But this was years ago. So there were some competitors. Also, VW had some success with their RE3 at some time, until people realized the software was horrible and you could get an update by delivering your car to the dealership and then waiting 2 days. Yeah, and God. But Lars, you can go on with the other.
Yeah, well, in Europe right now, I would say the Volvo is doing quite well. I think is after the 2 Tesla models. They are their 3rd best-selling model here. And Skoda Enyaq has actually been a great favorite for the last couple of years as well. I think they made a very decent electric SUV. But
which Volvo model is that? Which one?
It's the 40 one, the XC40. So the new smaller one is still ramping up, but it's already on the list. So I think that's going to be a successful little car for Volvo here in Europe. It fits a nice little market for the still luxury vehicles, but not the big huge SUVs, but the smaller ones. Yeah.
One brand, Hyundai as well. That's something I see a lot on the road, and the ID4. I have a neighbor who has that. I really need to talk to him, but since I'm owner of a Tesla, we're doing stereo contests. No, but it's interesting. So ID4, ID3, I've seen a lot, and Hyundai, but that not any rankings here in my head. I don't have the recent ones, but yeah, that's probably it. And some BMWs, but those are more in the hybrid segment, I would say.
Yeah, I think
since I have you guys here, can I ask you what's your Tesla stock outlook? Lars, what are you thinking about what's going to happen to Tesla?
Well, I hope it drops some more because I had to sell some stock to do some investing in my new company and the new channel I'm starting. So, but I sold at 238, so it has been dropping ever since. So I'm a happy guy. So I hope I can buy them back later. But the outlook. I think it could be a tough year because we are in, as Elon said, between two growth waves, and we can already see the headlines about Tesla is not growing right now and all that issue. So if they, also because of Berlin factory and all the problem that we have right now, if they can't show growth numbers over the next couple of quarters, that stock might be seeing more hits. But I did actually make a whole video about the catalyst for 2024 because I think there was so much negativity about Tesla and nobody saw any good things happening in 2024. But I think there's so much good stuff happening for Tesla in 2024, but it's not all about the car. But we do have the ludicrous Tesla Model 3 coming out hopefully next quarter. But then we can hopefully also see the mega pack ramping up continue and hopefully see a doubling this year as well. So I think we actually have a lot of catalyst through the year and also with the Optimus robot and all that kind of stuff. So I do think we could see maybe by the end of the year it start to rise again. If not, I think we will see 2025 that is really going to be something special. Since we have been trading sideways with the stock for like 3 years now, so maybe it needs a year more. But because we don't have the growth and we don't have the next generation vehicles that everybody is waiting for, but if they can show something from that out of Texas, just reveal it by the end of the year, something, I think that could be a huge deal. Or else I think it's 2025 is really going to could be the breakout year for the stock.
Okay. And Michael?
So a couple of stories. One is reminded of Warren Buffett's investment in BYD so long ago. And he said, I don't understand the technology. I don't understand the company, but I know this guy, Wang Chongfu, the founder. I'm betting on the man. So when it comes to Tesla and its stock, I think I never want to bet against Elon. There's always going to be these ups and downs, but if we're holding for 3 to 5 years, then now is tremendous time to get in. That's one. The second one is the volatility of Tesla stock is something, growing up in Detroit, you bought Ford, GM, or Chrysler because those were steady. Maybe there's a dividend. We haven't seen, this is new territory. We haven't seen such a massive company with such a huge valuation swing so wildly. So I'm reminded of like when I lived in Asia, I did a lot of work for the investment banks, and I traveled to places like Scotland and London and Tokyo and New York and talked to portfolio managers. And they'd come in and they ask me all kinds of questions about Chinese automakers and EVs and the rest. So after an hour, I said, okay, you've downloaded a lot of knowledge from me. You probably do this all day long. And you're going to make a call, a big call on an investment. And he said, yes, see that clock? When it becomes 3:30 this afternoon, I have to move money. So I thought, my goodness, I've seen the inside of the beast. That's how our money is invested. These are the professionals who are moving money around. So what was my takeaway? No one really knows. No one really knows short term what's happening. So we're betting on the man, Elon. We're betting on the model. But short term, very tough call. After seeing how I saw portfolio managers make big calls based on just limited information. Fascinating.
Wow. Thank you so much, Michael. And then you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's are you an investor? Are you a trader? And what's your time horizon? If, you could be a trader with a 2-year horizon, I think, you'll be okay. I think it's really about that conversation of investor versus trader. I think a lot of the catalysts, I think this year is going to be choppy in some respects. Tesla's got a great kind of base business. They have highest gross margin EV company. EVs are growing faster. Arguably, you've got the AI growth and AI silicon software services and so forth. That's kind of like the biggest growth wave in the market right now. And I would say right under that, you've got EVs are still, that whole business is still growing. That's why everybody was trying to attach their names. Anybody that's something to do with EV was trying to get their name out there, get a model, get an introduction out there. And that growth is still there. It may be less than the prior year, but that growth is there. And if you look at it over the last history of 3 or 4 years, every quarter doesn't have 70% growth in North America. There's times where it plateaus a bit and then it takes off again. But in this near-term period, I would say it's going to be a bit choppy because you've got a company that has been notoriously valued on its growth that's not growing as fast. And may not be, and maybe not growing at all. We'll see. So I think in the near term, and then Tesla has all these different, I would call them option plays, whether it's the global expansion of FSD, whether it's then eventually a robotaxi network after that, FSD partnerships potentially, of course, the robot and the compact vehicle and the energy business. It has all these different option plays. It's a very unique company. In the auto world, there's no company that's anywhere like it. So that's why people try to put it into an auto bucket. You really can't put it into an auto-only bucket when their R&D resources are spread, from AI to energy storage. You can't necessarily put it there. So like what happened with, I think, NVIDIA, where basically this thing was sitting there with a $120 price in November of 2022. There's a ChatGPT moment. And everybody realized, oh my God, everybody's going to be buying this inferencing hardware, and they're going to be buying this training hardware. It's only going to come from this one company. Oh my God, we better start buying it. And then the stock goes crazy. I think the market's going to be late on Tesla again. It's going to be, when is that transition? Do you have to wait for the compact vehicle to start printing revenue? Do you have to wait for the bot to start printing shipments and revenue? Do you have to wait for FSD expansion to start, or the partnerships? Or is the market going to see these coming and then try to get ahead of it? So that's the question of, is it going to start moving up at some point this year or some point next year? But we know the revenue lines for these will probably start getting heavily weighted more in 2026. So I think it goes back to your time horizon, and are you an investor or a trader?
So for me, it comes down to one simple fact. I just look onto the overall performance of what Tesla is doing under the hood, more or less. And I think it's it's like Jeff said, it's about, are you a trader or a long-term investor? It's you have to view the company totally different then. But in the long term, when you really look into it, the Cybertruck showed that Tesla is in the farthest front of technology with cars. When we talk about cars, the compact will have many things the Cybertruck already has, especially with then brake-by-wire introduced and stuff like this. Those kinds of things are revolutionary, because then Tesla has their platform to produce any vehicle category they want to do, because they can move the wheels, make the wheels further away, nearer together, kind of. So this is really a huge deal for the future of the company. In the next 5 years, 6 years, I see the time horizon. When you even expand it, it's going to be better and better. And Tesla did decisions like 5 years ago almost that already kind of claimed the trajectory, what the company is kind of going forward. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball, and we have to look into everything, and sometimes it makes sense financially to just cut something off again. But people used to think that Amazon really is a bookstore, an online bookstore. AWS, Dojo, interesting stuff there. I mean, not that they provide that, but having a hardware powerhouse with Dojo, for example, the supercomputers and stuff like this, they will solve FSD, not Mercedes with the level 3 autonomy thing that's hard-coded, and they're already on a different path there. They're solving real-life vision. So for me, the technologies Tesla's developing and the many things they are working on simultaneously and building out their production, perfecting their production, that they will pump out the compact car so fast. I think this one will be a huge catalyst, and FSD will be a huge catalyst. And then we still have the bot. Then we still have energy, which is a bigger sector than the car industry actually. So energy is a huge deal. You can earn a lot of money there. So I think Tesla should keep going, and the stock will move up someday in a year, maybe. Yeah. Who knows? I don't care. So that's my opinion on that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful. It was a real pleasure having all of you. This is just the powerhouse of expertise here. Thank you so much, Michael Dunne. Follow him on DunneInsights.com. His website's the best place to find all his contacts. You got Lars, Best in Tesla, just original YouTube channel, fantastic. And then you got Jan. Check out his YouTube channel, TeslaFix. Thank you, three of you, joining Jeff and me on Cyber Bulls. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.